The biggest changes or trends in e-commerce that we expect in the coming decade will include, first of all, we believe that emerging markets will lead innovation in this space. This is because, on the one hand, this part of the world has been behind, and when you are engaging a trend for the first time, there tends to be a lot of innovation. But also because of the nature of these markets will drive a lot of what will become the way e-commerce works going forward. Another key thing we expect will be that B2B e-commerce will become a major driver. Right now, B2C has been the predominant, you could say, category of e-commerce that we've all been familiar with. But there's now a lot we are seeing around B2B where small businesses are becoming the primary customers of e-commerce platforms, and more brands are beginning to engage them as the target audience.
So there are a couple big changes coming to e-commerce this decade. I think, first of all, COVID has obviously had a huge impact on taking businesses online, everyone from fitness instructors to finding shades of lipstick. And I think that's fantastic for Africa because it means that more investor dollars are flowing into the space, and that will result in more innovation and more companies like mine at Copia Global to thrive. Secondly, I think data, AI, is a big change that's already started and is going to have a massive impact in the coming decade. I love the quote, when personalization is done right, customers will feel like you're reading their minds. And that's what we are kind of striving to accomplish at Copia.
From my perspective, I see four big changes coming to e-commerce in this decade. The first one is mobile first, where we'll present our platforms as e-commerce companies to customers using mobile. The second one is cross-border, especially now that Africa is being treated as a free trade area. We'll be able to access more markets, both as buyers and sellers. The third is we will solve the delivery problem and focus less on individual delivery solutions and have aggregated solutions. And then the fourth one shall be embedded services along with the e-commerce, so that we're not just focusing on payments and credit, but other embedded finance.
So as an organization, I think we're taking advantage of some of these trends and improving our customer experience. So first of all, I think with the increase in interest and adoption of e-commerce globally, more capital flowing into the industry, I think that means Copia Global will be able to grow faster. We have intentions to expand across the continent, and that will become easier as there's more capital flowing into Africa to fund e-commerce innovation. Secondly, I think the use of data means we can reach more consumers with better product offerings, meet their needs better. We can also reach more rural customers more cost effectively using that data. So that's a big kind of underpinning of everything Copia does. Thirdly, I think you'll see we'll be using more influencers and shoppable video ads and this kind of thing that is loved by our customers.
Always, I would remain price conscious. So I would always look for opportunities that deliver value for money, right? Whichever channels I'm engaging through. Also, I will remain very keen on the entire buying experience. So I want to be engaged by whichever platforms I'm working with in a way that delivers the same experience, whether it is through digital or through physical channels. As an organization, the way to deal with this is to ensure that one is data-led, right? Data has to play a fundamental role in how we personalize the experiences for our customers, but in also how we choose the assortment of inventory that we make available to these consumers, the options we provide to these consumers from a finance standpoint, whether that is for payment or access to credit to allow them to buy more.
For starters, our platform is accessible by our customers both on USSD and app. That means both users with feature phones and those with smartphones are able to access our platform. Second, we're scaling across Africa, looking at the cross-border access. where we are enabling our buyers and sellers to be able to access markets other than their local market. In the future, we're seeing that is going to be one of the other big things. And then third is we already have embedded services. For instance, our first product is Buy Now, Pay Later, which enables our consumers to purchase goods on credit and then pay when they have been able to sell it and get the credit.
The biggest thing we reckon key players may be missing out on within this space would be the opportunities that come from data and insights, right? Now, this plays a very big role. If you're a big manufacturer or even a medium-sized manufacturer, data is fundamental to how you deploy your sales efforts, right? Determining the channels you want to engage customers through and what you're passing through those channels. But even for your marketing and deploying your marketing budget, you need to know what message to take to each customer. And then I would reckon that ultimately as well, even in your product development, having access to data and insights allows you to understand what the right product for the customer is and how to position it.
So key players in the e-commerce space who are missing out on opportunities in the future, to me, I think the most important basic tenet underpinning everything we do at Copia is building trust, earning the trust of our customers. And that's not just about a trusted brand. It's about everything that builds that trusted brand. So it means that our deliveries are reliable, that we have easy returns, that we don't charge for shipping, that we personalize the experience to every individual consumer, that we're there for them when tough times hit, like COVID reducing income levels, that we reach them wherever they are, no matter how remote the village. And building that trust means that you then drive customer retention, which is kind of the holy grail in e-commerce.
Startups interested in the e-commerce space have multiple problems to solve. Some of them will tackle infrastructure, some of them will tackle education, some of them will tackle like ease of access for consumers. Um, this speaks to delivery model problems. How can we improve the delivery? How can we transition from cash on delivery to online payments and other payments, especially now that we're looking at cross-border? And then most importantly, around educating the masses on how to use the technology. So even as we look to governments and mobile operators for internet access and ease of or affordability of data, we're looking at startups to help with the, let's say, softer stuff and some of the bigger problems as well, because then they have the agility to deal with that, not necessarily the capital to do it.
Some key issues in the logistics sector that have become more visible through the pandemic. I guess one is the fact that the fragmented supply chain that services this informal market is very fragile. And we've seen the impact of that in the fact that, the moment we were faced with lockdowns or other similar constraints, these informal markets struggle to get access to inventory and struggle to get access to any financing. Another key feature as well is that in environments like this, where you have, underdeveloped logistics infrastructure, direct-to-consumer models are very expensive. And I think most of us as consumers have experienced this, where you order products and the cost of delivery many times tends to be as high, if not higher than the cost of the product itself.
Policies play a big role in facilitating the e-commerce market. Two things. One, we need to tackle trust, and then we need to tackle infrastructure. On the trust side, the government can come up with online consumer protection that help buyers and sellers trust each other. As a user, you're sure that what you order is what you get, and as a buyer, you're sure that the money that the item that you've sent out will be paid for. So this changes the model where we now do cash on delivery, which is about 98%, and focus instead on online payments and people. The other part of it is infrastructure, availability of technology. Can you access the internet? Do you have a smartphone? Do you have can you afford to buy them? And then on top of it is the education, right? Are you able to use these tools once they're given to you? So it's not just infrastructure, but you can also influence the behavior.
I think to promote the growth of e-commerce in African markets, you really have to have the right government policies and regulations in place. And I think that comes in the form of consumer protections largely. And otherwise, to the extent that governments can allow e-commerce businesses to thrive without imposing onerous taxes that retard growth, then what you'll find is the kind of GDP flywheel gets going that consumer tech companies can drive. So to the contrary, I'd love to see more governments actually create tax incentives to bring the birth of new tech companies and to enable existing companies to grow faster without the burden of onerous taxes to weigh them down.
Hi everyone, thank you for watching. My name is Olanrewaju Odunowo, Ed TechCabal Insights. We just watched the session with the panelists, and we're just going to go straight into the live Q&A session. I have with me here Kelvin Umechukwu. Kevin, please come up. And I've got via Zoom Fatma Nasujo, who is currently the Global Head of Operational Excellence at Sokowatch. We've also got Onyekachi Izukanne, co-founder and CEO of TradeDepot. Hi, Fatma. Can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. We've also got Tracey Turner, and like I announced earlier, Kelvin Umechukwu. Tracey Turner is a serial entrepreneur and seasoned business executive who has held leadership roles in social businesses and emerging markets for more than 25 years. She's the CEO and co-founder at Copia Global. Onyekachi Izukanne is a co-founder and CEO of TradeDepot. And yeah, we have Kelvin Umechukwu, who I mentioned earlier, is a co-founder and CEO at Bumpa. Welcome, Kelvin.
Thank you very much.
We're just talking backstage, Kelvin, and one of the things that you said was, for the e-commerce sector specifically, it's beyond just collecting, payment, right? Mm-hmm. There's like the whole full suite of solutions. Can you talk us through like the blind spots, that exist currently,
Oh yes, and I think I was just mentioning the fact that for a lot of payments, solutions today, building for commerce, we tend to think about it in a little bit different way, because we are focused on commerce, fully on Bumper, and when you think about it from our own view, we're seeing. How do you handle things like returns? How do you improve customer loyalty? How can you help these small businesses with increased visibility? Beyond just collecting payments online and offline, which definitely is part of the things that we're hoping to see. Connecting more of the payment solutions to Bumper and to support these merchants, collecting both offline payments and online payments too.
Fantastic. We have a question on Slido. Let me just, Tracey, if you can take this for us. What is needed to significantly advance one's business in e-commerce today?
What is needed?
Yes.
Well, so I'm the founder and chairman of Copia Global, and our target market is basically the middle class in Africa, an emerging middle class. And I would say when I started the company, absolutely no one thought that we could reach this market, serve this market in a profitable way because of the cost of distribution. And I think that we, fortunately, over the last 8 years or so, have cracked that nut. And I think some other great e-commerce businesses around the continent have also proven that we can actually reach the kind of 800 million middle-income Africans who are, should be empowered global consumers like anyone else. But what needs to follow now is the inflow of more significant amounts of investment capital to enable us to grow, because e-commerce businesses inherently are about scale. You just have to reach a certain scale to reach profitability, and that requires capital, and it requires us to grow into multiple markets. And so I'm actually, one of the upsides, the few upsides to COVID, I think, is the more attention from investors is coming to the e-commerce space. And there's more, because there's more interest, there's more innovation, and more capital will flow. And that's, I think, going to significantly help the industry in Africa.
Fantastic. Let me just segue to, or let me just go to Izukanne. Tracey just talked about, accessing capital, and I know that Izukanne, you play in like serving the retail space and all of that. So I wanted to ask you, how do e-commerce businesses, position themselves to sort of access capital? How do they make a case, to investors? Because Tracey just pointed out difficulty in accessing capital.
Thanks, Olanrewaju, and great to be on the panel today. I think a couple of things to take on board when you think about how you access capital as an e-commerce business. For the typical investor, they're looking to invest in opportunities that have scale, right? And I mean, arguably, it's been clear that e-commerce in Africa, a continent with the population we have, and even the cumulative spending, the aggregate spending ability we have, should make sense for e-commerce. I think the challenge has been figuring out a business model that works, right? And I think that's what we've seen over the last half decade or so. Different efforts trying to figure out how to make this work, given the constraints we have around logistics and so on and so forth. So, I think, and this kind of builds on the point Tracey made today, we're finding more models that are proving, that they can execute, right, and scale. And I believe that the moment you're able to demonstrate that ability to execute in this environment, find models that make sense in this environment, you're likely to find investors or capital that is willing to back you. Also, the momentum that you see when there is enough capital now coming in is quite useful, and I think this is actually a good time for innovative e-commerce plays to look, to set up and scale on the continent.
Okay, Kelvin, let me quickly go to you. Okay. So there's still like significant challenges, around e-commerce and all of that. You order something and it takes so long to get to you, and some of it is not the fault of the founders or the companies. Sometimes infrastructural challenges around logistics and all of that. How founders like you thinking about these problems and overcoming them?
What?
And like solving them, overcoming them.
Yeah. Thank you very much. For us at Bumpa, how we see it is, we're providing tools to make small business owners, SMBs, be able to sell, and manage their business both online and offline. But we're trying to help them, bring in a lot of these solutions that already exist. So the thing is, a lot of solutions exist, and they're mostly fragmented or exist in silos for some of these businesses. And it becomes a lot difficult, because of how, fragmented that these solutions are. You have a small business owner using at least 10 apps. just to handle their day-to-day, and that's for those that are even digital, those that are not digital are just basically blocked off. So what we're doing is how can we connect more of the small business owners to solutions that already exist? Yes, and I don't think, we can do, we can, do any magic in terms of how to advance, logistics, right now. But I think that it has changed so much from where it was, 2 to 3 years ago. And we're just, excited because now more and more people are building for this space, and definitely it means that so many things will become better for these merchants.
Thank you. Let me go to you, Fatma. Kelvin just talked about like building for this place, and we know that there's a lot of social commerce going on via WhatsApp, for example, across the continent. People are just offline. Well, not necessarily offline, but like not using any particular platform, but just by themselves, buying and selling on WhatsApp, for example, and platforms like that. So there's a question here about what's your take and observation of the status of social commerce in Africa. What needs to be there to make it work?
I think that's a very good question. And what I'd say, it's about the trust with the social commerce. A lot of us are buying from people we know because we feel like we can reach them, which also limits to some extent the number of goods and services that we can access, because I'm going with, can I verify where I'm getting this from? Which is where businesses like ours come in, because you're a registered company, you're a company that has a known brand, you're able to do that. But you'll see more and more, especially for things outside of FMCG, people are dealing directly with people on social media, Instagram, Facebook. One of the researcher studies that we did, we found that people are purchasing more from Facebook rather than Instagram for some of the market segments that we're looking at. If I see you on Facebook, then I'm able to purchase it from Facebook. So then social commerce is big in Africa, and it's where most of the businesses are going. So the question then becomes, as an individual retailer or seller, how do you get your product out there? How do you get more people to see it? How do you get payments so that if I decide I'm selling to another country outside of Kenya, how do I get them to see that? How do I get delivery there, and how do I get them to pay?
So that's a very fantastic point, Fatma. Just payment, there's been a lot of solutions. We've heard some of them today, but we still don't have, there's some countries, for example, that you can't pay, say if you want to pay from Nigeria or even some African countries where it's difficult to pay. The payment infrastructure is still not fully built out. There are people working on it. Shout out to all the, fintech startups. But how do we build a truly Pan-African e-commerce solution, with these payment challenges?
I think payments is interesting because then with everything financial, there's regulation, different currencies for different countries. So it's extremely fragmented, right? If I want to send a payment in Kenya, it's easier to send money from one city to the other because we've adopted mobile money. In Kenya, everything is utility payments. It's payments to other people or paying businesses. We're doing it based off M-Pesa. So that has helped the Kenyan market. But if you look at other countries, mobile money hasn't picked up at the same level as Kenya. So what are those solutions? We're looking at card. It's not working as well for Africa. Then what are the other payment options? And that's dealing with cross-border payments. And then we're seeing companies like Cheaper Cash, Flutterwave, all trying to set up infrastructure that helps you convert your currency from one country to the other and receive it instantly. So there is progress. It's slower than we want it to be, but it's a lot better than where we were 10 years ago.
Fantastic. It's definitely a lot better than where we were. So Tracey, this is for you. Someone says kudos to Tracey and Copia. Obviously a fan there for making their agents super ubiquitous. What drove Copia to pick the agent model, and how is it applicable to attract and serve non-consumers?
Well, thank you for the question. Yeah, so our target market, the kind of middle and emerging middle class, only about 6% of them have access to smartphone, Facebook, WhatsApp, all these apps that we're all talking about. 94% of them are in a text message world, right? So we said, okay, well, how do we reach those people given the current state of the world? We're a technology company, but our customer base are largely still stuck on feature phones only. So that combined with thinking about the economics of delivery, where if your average order value is quite small, there really isn't a cost-effective model to deliver to every individual customer's home. So that combined also with the trust issue that we talked about earlier, where this demographic is inherently distrusting. They don't have lots of experiences of trading other than in their social networks. So the agent model just answered all of those challenges, right? So it was a no-brainer for us to go out to an area that has a large population of middle to low-income people, find a fantastic shopkeeper who is already well-known in the community, and train them to be a Copia agent. And then they're our sales team. They're our voice on the ground in the towns and the villages. And they can hold the hands of our end consumers through the process of making an e-commerce transaction. They can also take cash, so you avoid mobile money challenges with people who are largely unbanked. And you also can cost effectively deliver. I mean, yeah, if you order from Amazon, it might take a couple weeks to get your package, but if you order from Copia, you're going to get it in 2 days because we can reach these agent locations quickly and easily every day. So it just is, I think, a fantastic model to reach the 800 million Africans who are really disenfranchised and are still living in an informal retail world, and we can bring them into an e-commerce world with a kind of unique model that's tailored to their needs.
Thank you, Tracey. And you just talked about, unique model tailored to their needs. One of the things that we find is, just people don't even have the money to purchase some of these things. I mean, the spending power is not so high around here. And someone just asked, and I'm going to direct this to Izukanne, talking about buy now, pay later services. How key are the buy now, pay later services in Africa? Any downside and risk for such to proliferate?
Thanks, Olanrewaju. Yeah, so I mean, buy now, pay later services in Africa, like really everywhere else, emerging market or even mature markets, is super useful to the consumer, right? Many times you are in scenarios where your spending patterns don't match the patterns with which you earn, and you want to get access to a service or a commodity sooner than you have cash to settle. So being able to roll out these services really could be quite transformational for your buyers, whether your buyers are consumers or retailers, as we have in our case at TradeDepot. The other part of the question asking what the downsides/risks are. Like any scenario where you're talking about credit, right? Essentially, buy now, pay later models are lending models. You're extending credit to a customer, and you need to be able to determine which customers will be both willing and able to pay you back, right? So the primary risk there is credit risk. It is risk that you deal with by figuring out a way of predicting who will pay back, right? And that's what the entire credit scoring science boils down to. I have a group of 100 people who are my customers, and I want to predict of these 100, which of them will be able to pay back and on time if I were to lend to them. The way to deal with this, and this is something that is common to e-commerce platforms like TradeDepot today, but I've seen that as well across other platforms, including for most of us on the panel, is to leverage the different data points you have for these customers, right? The fact that they've been buying from you, so you have their buying histories, you know how much they buy, how frequently they buy, and what they buy. And factoring in other KYC data, build a model that kind of tells you that with some level of certainty, right? These 50 or 60 odd players within the 100, if I give them a loan, they will pay me back. And then, it's a win-win for you and for that customer, because your service becomes stickier. They want to deal with you versus another supplier. But for them, they also are able to get product even when they don't have cash. If you think about a typical retailer, being able to buy product when they don't have cash is really gives them a step up, because they can then sell this product and then get the money paid.
Okay, thank you, Izukanne. So Kelvin, let me just quickly, ask, because we've spoken quite a bit about your business, and one of the things that I realized, just speaking with you, was just collaboration. It's about the fact that you're building a solution, in partnership with some fintech companies, some logistic companies. What is the importance, of that sort of collaboration, and how does it work out, in terms of unit economics and even just profitability going forward?
Yeah, I think this part is actually interesting. When we think about what commerce should be in the next 5-10 years, or if we're comparing e-commerce here to other markets, especially more advanced economies, you'll notice that there are a lot of interoperability, because different solutions, work with other solutions. Either it's payments, either it's credit, either it's fulfillment. All these things, have to come to play, when you're dealing with commerce. And that's what we're sort of focused on. How can we, help collect offline payments with, for instance, Paga solution, collect online payments for these merchants with a Paysac solution. Help fulfillment with, GIG logistics, and for the merchants, it's actually really important, because it gives them options. It gives them the ability to work with a lot of different solutions, at the same time. And this does not also only affect normal infrastructure solutions like payments and logistics. It's also in what's happening on social media. A lot of people currently sell on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and for us, what we believe, the future of commerce for us is going to be mobile, online and offline, and also conversational, and that's like the social part. And we're focused on helping bringing all these tools together for the small business owners to be able to take part of the digital economy. Be able to sell from where you are in Ibadan, you're selling to someone in the US or in Ghana. I think that's like what's important to us. And for the unit economics and how this makes sense in terms of profitability, and that's where a lot of partnership have to come in place, where we're sitting on the table, but we're also discussing, how we can make it work, not just for the people providing the services, but for us also, and also, definitely for the merchants. Just a win-win-win situation, for everyone.
Yeah, fantastic. We've run out of time, but I just really want to take like a final comment from Fatma. Fatma, where do you see the future, of the e-commerce industry over the next 5 years, 10 years? And we can close with that. Yeah.
Definitely mobile first. We'll look at the different solutions that we provide mobile first. We shall also look at solving the delivery problem. And this is not just the fulfillment side of it. It's also the payments. We're going to look at the user as end-to-end, how they experience the buying on our platforms. And that's being able to use data to recommend what they should buy preemptively, even before they think about it, knowing exactly what's going on in their minds, and using that data not to be intrusive, but just to make their lives easier. And then embedding other services in it, which is financial services, more than just credit. So then it's banking and everything else, more than somewhere you go rather than something you do, even as you do something else. So you're able to get your products and services wherever you are. You're able to access banking services, whichever they are. It's financial, it's credit. You're getting to get those goods and services. And that's where I see e-commerce going in the future.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Izukanne. Thank you, Fatma, Tracey, and Kelvin. I hope you had a great session, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.